Welcome back to PowerPivot table version 1.2. In our current video, we are about to see how to create an interactive dashboard using the data. So here we are going to start with few basic dimensions now. So I'm going to group the data here. I'm going to show you how I can use the old version effectively so that I can bring the data as a non-group data type, and generally the latest version actually gives you a cushion, or it is a little better compared to the older version in file size compressions. But older version gives you one extra advantage or a gig that we can work with it. Again, this is something which I stumbled upon when I started working on it, and again, I'm just applying that in our video. When I try to do this video, and I stumbled upon when I do this. Actually, I don't know this before I do this video. Let's see how I'm going to do that. So here I have our data. So the data are available in a brand new sheet for me. And in this data, I just copied this data again and then encrypted it here. And this is the agenda that I would like to keep building for my interactive dashboard. But before that, I would like to create a group for the dates and a group for my time. So what I can do right now is I want to create two different groupings here. So let's see how it's going to work for me. So for example, if I want to get the monthly sales, the agenda's point is what I want to get here. I can definitely get with an easier. So I'm going to place the cursor in here and I'm going to use the latest keyboard shortcut Alt NVT, and then I will give an OK for new data. Automatically, when I click the date, as you are working in a latest version, so it's going to automatically group the data for me. So it's going to give you the quota, and again I'm looking for a monthly sales here. Whenever I do this, I preferentially, or I will preferably keep the year intact, because if I don't keep the year intact here, the disadvantage that I will have is my January months will all be clubbed together. So for example, when I go back here and I'm going to add a date here and give an OK, and you can see all the data comes in play. I'm going to take the date out of the equation. I'm going to keep the quarter out of the equation, and I can see that. If I don't have a year tab here, or if the year is not coming on top, then the rest of the data comes in place here. So now we can see that then when I uncheck the year, my January sales will be the combination of all the 3 years here. So because I have multiple years here, so that's why I'm just keeping the year first, and then now I'm going to add the revenue that I earned on each and every component. So now I got my list here. So if I'm looking forward for multiple years, I can put the years in the column so that I can see the data even more readable, not very clumsy, because when I add a year on top of my month, I have to scroll down to see the data, wherein when I drag them to the column, so I'll see all the data in this list. Then to format our pivot table, we always use design, report layout, and show in tabular form. And I'll be adding a value field settings for all the data here, which allows me to control the data better. If you don't want a decimals, you can remove the decimals out of the equation, or you can add a decimal to the list. So now I got the monthly sales for each and every year, the overall grand total, and another component comes in. There is one more dimension that I can do here, is I can just bring back the year again here, and I didn't do the reporting layout. So if I uncheck the report layout out of the equation by bringing the data back to the compact form, you can see the data comes in here. You can see that subtotal comes on top of the data here. And when I make the subtotal to the bottom of the data, so you can see that the subtotal jumps here. So that's what a subtotal can do for us. And again, if I want a separate subtotal to come on top of the data, probably I'll be using a separate pivot table logics altogether, so that I can connect them, so that it can work for me easily. So now I got the subtotal going to the bottom, and I can do the subtotal to the top of the data. And if you want to collapse and other things, I probably add a slicer here, that way it controls the data better. Or I can just select the whole list, I'll come back to the collapse, or expand, I'll say collapse all of them in one part, so that you'll see the yearly sales on each and every part. If I want them in a monthly base, then I can just come back again, and then I can say expand the entire field here. This is how I'll create a monthly pivot here. Now I'd like to know what is the sales that's happening every hour of my workout. So Here you can see that the sales is also capturing the time of the sales that's happening here. So I would like to group them all here right now. I'm going to create another pivot table here, and then I will add the list here. But before that, if I want to create another pivot right now, so what happens when I give a tick mark on the date, it's automatically going to add my quarter and a year in a new pivot table also. How do we stop it? Now I want to create a weekly sales here. So normally if I do this in the latest version or any version about 2013 version or any other version about 27 version, it's going to bring the cache into one. So it will keep the memory of the cache automatically. So let me see how I'm going to break that jig here. I'm going to use the old key shortcut here called Alt D. So normally when I use that, when I give a next, so it's going to take the data from me and it's selecting the data next, and then it gives you a report like this. Because I've created a pivot table earlier using the latest version, and it says that would you like to create a report. When you read these dialog box, these are going to give you a best idea because it's not to keep the memory or the saved memory of the previous dimension. But again, I will do a small trick here. I'm using a small trick here to get it done. This is not going to come default if you are using the latest version. So I'm going to just give a no to it and then finish the data, and then it gives you create a list here. I'm going to give a date. You can see this data is coming up perfectly for me. I'm going to just give a control Z here, and when I do the control Z, automatically it ungroups the data and gives you the oldest format possible. In old pivot table, we will get the data in this way. So now I have an advantage of grouping them here. So now I can take the date alone and then make them into multiple points. Now this is separate cache, so my old data will not change here. I'm creating a new pivot table. Again, if I copy paste this, probably we had an issue when we work with the copy paste here. Now I don't do that. Now I know the revenues here very easily. Then I can just add the line item of my sales here. Now I know the weekly sales, what I'm getting out of it. And as usual, I will go for the design, report layout and show in tabular form. And then I change the value field settings to the specific number formatting. So this is how I break the component. I can create a weekly report here. If I normally copy paste the pivot table, it won't work for me. So when I do use the pivot table in two different version keyboard shortcuts, I can get what I want here. Now without further ado, I will go for the next part called how to group the time. Now I want to know timely sales. So which hour of the sales or which is the peak time that I make the sales regularly in a period. So I want to just go back to the pivot table again, and this time I'm going to just rename them as hourly sales. And then I'll give a tick mark in this time. Automatically gives you the whole list here. I'm going to remove all our minutes and hours, and then you can see that it gives you the hours part alone. Now I can get our line item of sales here. And we got the line item of sales. Then I can just do the report layouts here, and then I create a pivot chart here by giving Alt F1. That's going to give you the list here. You can see that how the data are going to work for me here. Again, it's let me keep the time here instead of. So once I get that list, then I can see that the sales that I'm dealing really good between 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So these are the sales that I have here, and I can just add a value field settings to this. And I can add a currency to the data for us. And I can add a label on top of it. Probably I can get to know exactly what is the hour at which my sales are peaking. I can see that from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. my sales are good. 4 p.m. my sales are good. Now I mentioned the timing in 24-hour pattern, so I can see all the data in this way. But this is how we create a hourly sales. So now I'm jumping back to our old data. So this is what I'm about to do right now. I'm going to create an interactive dashboard here. So not in the older dialog box, because generally the older dialog box is all what I've used right now. So I'm going to add one more line right now. So I'm going to create a 33 point A here. going to create an interactive dashboard using the above agenda. So now I'm going to build a list. Again, I've already added a list. I'm going to add all my data further to the data 2 now. So let me add one by one. So I'm going to take only the monthly sales here. I'm not going to bring in the year in place. So my data is going to be a little different from the monthly pivot that I had here. So I can even use that for my chart if I wanted to. I just am shifting the year out of the equation. Now I can just copy it one more time, and then I can keep this as monthly sales 2 itself. So then I'm going to create a company wise sales here. So I'm going to come back to my list here, add a new pivot table, put in a brand new sheet. I would like to go by the brand of the company and the line item of revenue that I made here. So then I do the report layout and showing tabular form, and then I'm going to just rename them. Let's say total revenue, and then I can add the currency symbol to it. So now I'm dragging that to the next sheet. I'm calling this as company's revenue, and I would like to keep the header also in the same pattern. So company revenue, and then mark them up here. Now if you want to build a pivot table here, you can do that. Again, I'll go back to the monthly pivot table again, make them look better. Then I'm going to name them as monthly sales. And then I'm going to create a chart. Alt F1 will give you a chart here. That's going to give you different set of sale dimension here because it shows a huge value. So let me just reiterate the years again. So let me keep the yearly sales in place instead of monthly sales. That looks a little better. So we keep them in that way, and then I want to create a chart. Right? So now I got the list here. So now I want to reiterate the charts now. So I'm going to just make the chart names another component come accordingly and add a data label to it. So most of the data is similar here. So let me bring it. I will not sit and create this every now and then. Instead, I can copy paste the entire data into the list here. So let me show you what I'm trying to explain here. Change the colors. Now I want to build the next 3 agendas for the list. I'm not going to create from scratch here. I'm not going to create a pivot table again. Instead, I'm going to duplicate whatever the result that I got here. So how do I do that? So I have a monthly sales here, and then I'm going to got the company revenues here, or the monthly revenue is what I want to add here. Sorry about that. Now I would like to duplicate this. I click, move or copy, add a copy of this data, and I'm going to change the agenda alone. So what is the agenda that I have is the products here. So what are the product that I'm dealing with? I want to do. I want to say what is the product revenue that I made out of it, and then I rename the headers here. This will save a lot of time for us, and then we can play around with the data betterly. So I'm going to just say, take the data out of the equation. I'm going to say all item numbers. So what's the data that I have is called toy name is what I want to add here. So I'm going to say toy name here. So that way you can see sales happen in the toys can be broken into multiple places. And I would like to recolor them by adding the design, change colors, and add a color to it. And now I want to do the next 2 dimension customer age group wise list and payment method wise. So I'm going to create a new data here again, and I'm going to rename that as payout method. and then rename that even in here, payout method, and I'm going to just uncheck the list out of the list here, and then I'll say payment. So let me see what I've named it here. It's called payment. Yes. So I'm going to check the payments here, and you can see how many different variant that I have on the payment method, and I can change the colors also here. And finally, I'm going to add the last and the final dashboard that I wish to add here. That's the customer age group wise list. So customer age, then click this, come back here, customer age revenue, then come back to the methodology here, and then I'll uncheck the payment out of the equation. Then I go by customer age, and then I bring the age to my rows. I got a big list here. Again, we already saw the grouping a lot, so I'm going to just create a separate group right now. And you can see the groupings is starting with this, ending with this, and then gives you group by 10 here. So I wish to put them in 5 years. So I'm going to say okay. So that way you can see that what is the revenue that I've generated by the age group here. Then I can just change the colors here. That makes my life a little more easier. So now I got all my agendas, pivots for the data. And here I would like to keep them as a year, not as a month. So I'm going to uncheck the month out of the equation so that I'll see the year alone here. So this is how we build our pivot table for interactive dashboard. But again, I want to make this data even more readable and movable. To do that, I'm going to create a brand new sheet for us, and then I call this as dashboard. In simple terms, I call this as a revenue dashboard. And whenever I create a dashboard, I would like to keep a non-lined or a blank background. That would be better. To convert a black background, I'm going to go for view, uncheck the grid lines, and then I got it. And I'm going to add a word art to my header here. I'll call this as the revenue dashboard as I named it below. And then I'm going to select the whole data, make it a little smaller, and then adjust this to the top. Now I can just come back to this. I'll put this in the last line of the data, and I'm starting with the monthly sales. Now I can click this chart, and when I go back to the design, I can move the chart here, or I can use the right click here. I'm moving this chart to the last line called revenue dashboard. And then I'm going to drag it here, make it a little smaller here so that I can see to that you can read them in all situations given to us. In most of our data are simple. I'm giving a right click here and I'm taking the data to the last line. I'm making it uniform, as much as uniform as possible by me. So making it a little taller and a little smaller on the width. I'm taking a product wise. Again, this is becoming a little bigger and this is smaller. Okay, I have two big data that comes in place. So let me move the chart to the last line item and then adjust this accordingly. Keeping the height intact, but the width can be adjusted here. So make it as readable as possible so that we can, when you make a change here, you still can able to figure out what's happening in the data. So now I got the list, almost all of them, but again, my products are becoming a little larger than normal. So I'm going to move this to the revenue dashboard, and I'll keep them the view and reduce it a little less. So that you're reading the data completely. So when you interact it, you should know what the data happens here. And finally, I'm adding the customer age here. And if you want to make the customer age even more smaller here, you can do that, because I just added 5 years here as a break. So if you want to make it as 10 years, the data will look even more smaller, so that you can expand your product revenue chart a little bigger than this. So let me just reiterate that customer age again instead of keeping this, because it suggested me earlier as 10, convert that into 5. So now when I convert this will become even more smaller, and the data will also become a little smaller here. So that way it's easier for me to keep the smaller data. I can make the revenue a little larger than normal. So now I can read all the data very clearly. Again, see to that you keep the data intact to convert this or to view it better. So keep the item. I'll make this as maybe 85% so that I can see all the pivots really nicely. Now I'm going to add a slicer here. So I'll place the cursor in one of the chart and go back to the chart analysis and add a slicer. I'm going to take all these dimensions, whatever I've added right now. So I want to know the company by revenue. So I'm going to say the company name here, toy company name. And then I want a monthly sales here. So I'm going to add the month in place here, or the year in place here. So I call it as monthly, but I want to convert that into a year. I'll do that a little later. Then I'm going to take the payment methods. I'm going to take the payment in another slicer, and I want to know the product wise data in this list. And then I'm going to convert the age group of it. And I need one more dimension here called product wise revenue. So let me add these 4 in place. So I got this. Perfect. So I got all of them in a much more smaller pattern. So this converts, or it makes my life a little more easier. I want to have only one dimension here. I got the payment method. Yes. I got the purchase age group. As I group it, came all of them correctly. I got the years here, and I got the toy company name here. Now I'd like to get the product name alone. So I want to get one more slicer here. And then I want to go by product here. So here I have name. That's the product that I want to add here. So now I got all of them. So now I reformat this. So normally when I do have a slicer, I'll be hiding the 0 item data, and I'll make the chart as small as possible. So I'm reducing it. And the advantage of having a slicer right now is I can color them also according to the data that I have here. So I'm going to color them. And again, I have a list of data here. I'm going to reduce that into a smaller way. And I want to convert this into an orange color here. And I got, okay, so I can make this data a little bigger. So I got all my years. My toy company name is here. And I have the product name coming up here. So the product names are not all displaying in one part. Now I make sure that all of them are coming in one single view. And I'm going to go to the slicer again and color them. And now I got the payment method. So let me reduce the height of the payment method also. And I'm going to keep the age group here, and I'm going to make the age group also proper asset with no, because I don't see any additional data in my data, so I'm just adjusting that. So now I got almost all of my data list. I want to add a color to my product. I want to add a color to my list here. So now I got the pivot table for greater extent. But when I move my slices now, only the monthly sales moves here. And then before that, before I want to continue it, I want to rename it again. Go to the monthly sales and convert that into a yearly sales here, because I changed that to yearly because the month is too clumsy to view. So I'm making that as a yearly revenue. And when I change that, automatically my data changes in my list here. But when I move my slices, you can see only the slicer movement is happening on the yearly sales, not on the other part. So, but I want all of them to work around here. To do this, I'm going to click the slicer and go to the slicer part. You see a line called report connection. This you can achieve it by right click also. When I go for report connection, It is only added to the first pivot table that I made here. So now I want to make the other list. So what are the other components that I want to add right now? So I want a product revenue, payout method, monthly pivot is there, hourly sales is there. I'm interested because I have a lot of pivot table in the sheet, so it shows me all the pivot table in my list. When I give an OK, that's gonna change, and I'm gonna do that carefully here. Report connection, make it a little bigger. So company revenue, the headers are given here, so watch the headers and add data accordingly, and you can see the pivot table names are coming properly. So you can see the pivot table 10 is coming in most of the list. And again, I've copy pasted the pivot table 6 here, that's why it's giving you the same name again. If I've created separately, probably I would have got a pivot table 10, so that gives you a unique list of whatever we have here. And I'm going to do that to the other slices also. So I'm going to check all the pivot table 10s here, including my revenue, and that's already there, checked for me. And finally, I'm going to just add a list here. So now when I click my 2010, not just the first slice, the whole slice will change. In 2010, the revenue was 6,000 rupees was the revenue that I had here. Maybe, and then the revenue by company, revenue by payment methodology. So most of the people pay via cash or Visa. The top two payment methods are cash or Visa. And the top product that I'm selling is policeman here a lot. The next top product that I'm selling is police officer and a motorcycle. And you can see on the right, my age group is generally a parent, who a young parent or a middle-aged parent is buying a lot of toys here. My customer age says that 26 to 45 is the people who buy a lot of toys. So I can get all this information. When is the trend has changed in the next year? Let me see. No, the trend still remains the same slot. Again, I'm seeing the trends haven't changed much. So this is how we can do it, and this is how we create the interactive dashboard for us. So with this, I will end up this tutorial, and when we come back, we will learn how to use Power Query and how to use pivot table to a little more extended manner possible for us. Thank you so much. Stay updated. Happy learning.